Maxwell Marlow is also with us, the Economist and Director of Public Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. Maxwell, always good to gauge your views on this. Are you sharing those heady levels of positivity?
I think, firstly, hello, it's good to see you. Happy Budget Day. Happy Spring Statement Day.
Yeah, don't say budget, for goodness sake. Otherwise, the Ofcom boys will be onto us.
I know. Spring Statement. Look, I think he's right to be optimistic about the capital investment area. I mean, the data is just so clear. We haven't really had productivity growth since about 2007 in the UK, and that's affected all of your listeners and viewers. The pounds in their pocket are less because we haven't had that capital expenditure. And for a long time, we at the Adam Smith Institute have been pushing really hard to get those numbers up. So we are glad that the Chancellor has done some of that. It's good. But let's take this in the round. Essentially, she snuck in a few lines there. For example, the OBR has slashed the UK's growth forecast for this year from 2% to 1%. And, by the end of the Parliament, we're looking at about 1.8% GDP growth. So we're essentially treading water as far as an economy goes. And let's see how, as well, the demographics shift. If we keep immigration up, the OBR think that by 2027, we'll have 258,000, net immigration. So if those demographics continue to increase, that GDP growth gets widened out. And at the moment, we're in what we call a per capita recession, which means GDP per capita is falling, even though the economy itself is growing even just a little bit. And, I think overall, what I'm really concerned with here is just there is no real reform to the size of the state or the regulatory agenda. I mean, she's trimming at the edges here when it comes to welfare cuts, trimming at the edges when it comes to civil service reductions and modernizations. We need a really radical reshaping of the state in order to let the economy grow and for the British people to do what they do best, and that's invest and work. Yeah,
I said at the very beginning of the programme, when we started looking back at what has happened here, it does seem that for a couple of decades, we're in this period where a new chancellor comes in, whether they're from a new party or the same party. We've seen many of them over the last 10 years alone. They are tinkering with the system, and they're seeing, we can do a little bit over here and we can move something from there to there. But isn't it the system that's wrong in the first place? Isn't it that fundamental rerouting of the way we do business? Because until we do that, it's only ever going to be tinkering and dressing.
Yeah, I'd even call it, moving deck chairs around the deck of the Titanic as it plunges slowly or rapidly, actually, into the icy depths of the Atlantic. No, I think you're completely correct. The state is too large, right? So each year the government spends of your taxpayers' money over £1 trillion. And it's such a high number. It's hard to even comprehend the size of that spending. And a lot of that is state pension. A lot of that is welfare. The second largest is the NHS, which is, as we know, incredibly wasteful. It's not working. We need to have another think about how we provide healthcare in this country. I would suggest looking to Europe, where, waiting lists and, cancer diagnoses and treatments and whatever else aren't front page news every single day because they worked out the problems, right? They don't have a golden calf. And the third largest expenditure is debt interest payments. So we spend over £100 billion a year, £100 billion servicing our debt. And let's see what the gilt markets say later today on the back of this statement, because that could go up even further. So we have to be really, really careful, and we must be pushing down that debt, or it will be my grandchildren. I'm 25, Ian, right? I'm not at the stage of having children yet. It'll be my grandchildren who will be still loaded with that debt unless really radical change happens.
And just a word while you're with us on that central issue of house building. I mean, that seems to be very much pivotal to the predictions. They seem very enthusiastic over there at Labour HQ, number 11, reiterating that figure of 1.5 million homes. Lots of our listeners getting in touch saying they genuinely cannot see how that is achievable unless they're making those kind of flat pack homes. And I don't say that as a pejorative. Maybe there is something in that, because that is oddly a possibility.
Absolutely. Well, I've actually got my Labour Yimby pen with me at the moment.
Oh, wow.
I really do support the government's move to get stuff built. We just forget this all the time. Britain stopped building. It's really hard to really grasp that. The Lower Thames crossing was approved yesterday. It's taken years, and £300 million was spent on paperwork before spades even got in the ground, right? So I think the government can reach the 1.5 million target, and they would use things, so you call it flat pack homes, we would call it modern methods of construction. So that's essentially factories that produce bits of housing, and then they ship them in, they can build them really quickly.
Sure.
A very similar thing happened just after the Second World War. I think they'll do it, and they really need to. The housing deficit is approaching 5 million units, so really good luck to them, and we at the Adamant Institute will be supporting them all of the way to get the planning reforms we need.
Yeah. But will it equate to 1.5 million? And that's the answer. That's the question. What will the answer be? Maxwell, thank you, sir. Maxwell Marlow, Economist Director at the Adam Smith Institute.